Hi everyone, Crafty Nanny Jean here, and I have been working on a way to put hexagons together without doing the paper piecing, and you'll see at the end of the video what different things that you can do with these. But this one is flannel and it's nice and puffy, so there was different ways that I did this to get the batting inside. So what you'll need today is you will need either, you can get these on Amazon, and these are Hexagon templates, and they're very heavy, and they have little dots here, which helps a lot too, so that you know exactly where you're going to sew when you're sewing these together, because when you sew, you only want to sew to these dots, because you eventually will sew it together. You'll see in the video, this is 2.5 inches that I used. You can use any size you want. And then you will need some cotton batting, polyfill this is, and this is medium that I got at Walmart. You might want to try it too, and you'll see when you see the video, you might want to try to get the kind that doesn't pack down when you iron. And then fleece. I used fleece for the backing, but you can use anything you want for the backing. And I had a lot of scraps of different fabric, so what you'll need is just scraps of fabric that you can use. And this is just, I had one piece of Batman left from some quilt that I had made, and then I was just going to put the yellow around this one. So this, and then this one is a I believe I did Kwanzaa. Yeah, there's a Kwanzaa one in there, and there is Day of the Dead. So that'll be mixed together with that. And you will need 6, 7, so one for the middle, whatever you want to do for the middle. And I call these flowers. That's why I liked them. I thought they were flowers, and I think this would be really pretty in one. But you can use these for mug rugs, doilies, or to actually make a quilt, and I'll get to that in the video. And then I'll show you here how to sew in a minute. But so hopefully you can see this. So I'm going to sew from here, and I'm going to make sure those edges are together. So I'm going to go right in between that cross. I can't really see the dot that well on this one. And then I'm just going to take a couple of stitches, and I'm going to go back. And I went back. I took 4 stitches forward and then went 4 stitches back, because I am using a straight stitch. And then we're going to want to go down to this side, and we're only going again just to the cross mark. And I like to go almost to the end, and then stop my machine, and then use the and then back and cut, and then you have that. Okay, now we're on to the last one. And that one's a little bit more tricky. Hope you can see that in there. So we're still just trying to put them together so you can see the ends. And you can clip that if you want. So pull your other one out of the way, make sure it's not in your way there. And readjust. The last one's a little bit more tricky. Okay, and then right into the cross. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And stop it there. Just going to check and make sure everything's even still at the ends. And then stop just before you get to the end and use your wheel to go until you get it right into that cross. Then back and cut. Okay, I have one of these done where I did it, so I will show you what is next. So next we're going to go and we're going to start sewing each one of these together. So again, we're just going to go right where we left off sewing the other one. You'll see the sewing in there. You'll see the, excuse me, stitches in there, not the sewing. And then go a little bit forward, stop, go back, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then forward, almost to the end. Stop it, use your sewing wheel, and back stitch, cut. And you want to do that for each one of these. Hi everyone. Okay, what I'm doing is I was watching some videos that showed paper piecing with hexagons, and I wanted to try a hexagon quilt. This probably isn't going to end up being a quilt because I've used all my scrap fabric, but I'm going to show you what I did and how I sewed it, and I will show you some of the different things that I found out while I was doing this. Okay, the first one I did was this one. Now this one I just used, I backed them all with the same fleece. So fleece is very inexpensive, and and it's also large. So if you're doing like a large quilt, it's easier to use as backing, I think, than a sheet or getting fabric, which I heard you can get like 80-inch fabric and all that from some of the quilt shops, but I also heard that it may not be of the best quality always because it's harder to put together anything that's past 60 inches. So that's just what I heard. I can't tell you if it's true or not, but that's what a couple of people said on some of the videos that I watched. So I had, like I said, I'd watched the hexagon paper piecing, and that's great if you are, can hand sew a lot. I have a lot of arthritis in my hand, so it's really hard to do a lot of hand sewing, especially fine work that you would be doing with the paper piecing. So what I did is I cut it out with the hexagon, and I'll show you in a minute how I did that. So this one, this one here is the first one I did, and I didn't put any batting in this one. And the next one I did was, I believe I did this one with and this is flannel. So this turned out very nice with the flannel. But what I did, and it was really hard to do, I left a large opening actually in this one. I think this is the one where I got, and it was a little bit curvy. No, it was this one. Okay, so this was the second one I did. And I left the whole thing open. And when I went to sew it closed, it was a little curvy. So on my next one, which was the flannel one, which I really liked the puffiness of the flannel, if you're after puffy, was I only left a small opening like this. And I actually cut, and I'll show you that in a minute, I cut the batting kind of to the size of this, and then I took a 1/4 inch off and I stuffed it in there. And with this one, it wasn't that hard because I could almost get my hand in here, so I was able to straighten it out. However, when I did the next one and left the, just a small opening in it, I can't even see where my opening is because I did a stitch around it. I can't really see it that well. But where I left the opening, I only left about 1.5 inches, and it was really, really hard to get that in there. So that one was, I would not suggest that. So on my third one, and you can see the difference here, I hope, I don't know if you can see, but this is extremely puffy. Same fabrics, basically. And what I did here was I decided before I was going to put the backing on, and this backing is all one piece. I did that. I'll show you how I did that in a minute. But what I did here is I took, instead of trying to stuff it in afterwards, I put the stuffing, the batting on top of this part without the backing on. So I took Wonder Under and I cut a little piece of extra pieces that I had of Wonder Under, and I put a small piece in the middle, and then I put one on each of the sides to hold it in there. And then I made sure that I cut it so that it was about 1/4 of an inch. And then I sewed my backing on it, which, you know, would be this. So I sewed my backing on. And the problem with that is, and I did cover it with my parchment paper before I put it. When I put the batting on it like this, and this is a medium backing from Walmart, and it's like a polyfill. I think it's made by Polyfill, so that's gonna be the same thing you're gonna get anywhere. It's not particularly to Walmart. But later, watching a video, I found out that there's actually batting that does not push down when you are ironing it. So I had put that on there, and I ironed, obviously, that to make the Wonder Under stick, and it flattened it out. So I have exactly, like I said, the same fabrics on this. And this one that I ironed out was really flat, okay? This one I had eventually stuffed. This was one of them that I still did the stuffing, and I was able to get the stuffing in there, but it did take a really long time to get that batting stuffed in there. So that's what that is. So what you will need for this project is you will have to have some sort of, whether you cut it out with your Cricut or your Scan and Cut or your Silhouette, you can do that too and make yourself a hexagon form. So you can cut that out of thick cardboard if you have that, or foam, or whatever. And this one is somewhere it had the thing on. I think it was, oh, here it is. It's really tiny, and it's upside down here somewhere. That's, oh, okay, it's 2.5. So 2.5 inches is what it is, and that's across here. So that's what it is. So you can make it any size you want, and I do have other sizes, and I got this on Amazon. I'll put the links to all this stuff in there. And then, like I said, this is the batting from Walmart, and this is a medium batting. It's not very thick, so I can't imagine what if this is medium, I can't imagine what the one above it, the small, would be. I guess if that's what you'd call it. I don't know what you call it, medium. And then, like I said, you will need a piece of fleece or whatever you're going to back with. That doesn't matter. So what I am going to do next, okay, I've already sewn this one, and I will show you how to sew it in a minute. But here's another one that I had, so I'm going to show you what you do need to do. And I just do this, and it's just worth it to do it. And on darker fabrics, of course, it's harder, but it's because I did have to use my grease pencil on this one. I don't know if you can see that very well, but I used my red, and of course the grease pencil has a thick, so I'm going to have to make sure that I go into the line. But make sure that you do 1/4 of an inch seam, and you can these, if you have the forms, the hexagon forms. This one didn't. I'm not going to use that one because it's not. It must have been a shorter piece or something that I barely got out. I said I washed all this, so I have stuff everywhere. I keep trying to take it off. So on these hexagons, there is a little dot. There we go. That's better. Okay, so there's little dots that are cut out, and you can actually fit in your pencils like this, or you can. I do like myself to use a pencil because they are so sharp at the end, and it makes a nice line, and it's easier for me. But to show you on here, you won't be able to see the pencil. So you want to mark all of those dots, because that's where you're going to sew each time, and where your sewing is going to stop. And like I said, I'll show you that. Then I took each one, and I took my ruler, and I set it at the 1/4 of an inch, and I went around every one, and I did do the crisscross all the way, so hopefully you can see that. So I did this on, and I'm going to do this on all of them. It's up to you if you want. You can also just do it on your machine with the 1/4 if you want to do the tape thing, or if you have a 1/4 inch measure. I just find this easier because I do have glaucoma and a couple other eye problems, and this is just easier for me. So just do this all the way on all 4 sides, or all 6 sides, because you have a hexagon. You can tell I'm used to working with squares and not squares or rectangles. I have not done anything hexagon before. I just was watching videos, and the hexagon flowers came up, and I just thought they were so cool with that paper piecing. So this is what you want to do on all of them. Okay, and then next will be sewing. Okay, so the next step is after sewing, you want to iron, and I just ironed it. I have no idea if there's any problem or not, but I just ironed everything the same way, and I ironed the middle towards the middle, and I already ironed over on my big iron, but a couple of these are a little bit coming up here, so I'm just going to use my small iron and redo it a little bit. So just iron all those, iron them in the same direction or whatever. If you iron some way for your quilting, that's fine. Okay, so what I had in mind, because I did try all those other tricks that are different ways to put the batting in, so what I've decided to do this time is I am going to cut the batting, and I'll show you how I do that here in a minute. Put my thing back up so we don't get cut. Okay, so I have marked all but I think 2 here. So I'm going to start by making sure that I have 1/4 inch all around here. And I'm using, because this is dark, I have to use my grease pencil, which I don't like to do because I'm going to have to sew inside that line because the grease pencil is thick at the end. And it's the only thing so far that I do have some chalk that might have worked, but it's for some reason this is a corduroy, this particular piece, and it is stretching out on me, so I'm trying to be careful, and with the chalk it was pulling, and with the grease pencil it doesn't. So just make sure that all yours are marked, or your 1/4 inch on your sewing machine, that you have a good 1/4 inch seam on your sewing machine. Okay, so one of the things I do is I save all those papers that you get when you get packaging, and it has that brown paper, and I save those to make patterns. And so on the first hexagon I did, because I'm not doing separate hexagons for the back, I made a pattern. So basically, I mean, I'm not the best always at perfect cutting, so this looks pretty close. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut again, and this is how I do this. So here's my piece of fleece, and you want to find where you kind of left off, because you don't want to put the piece, you know, you want to keep going where you left off. So here's approximately where I left off, and it's really hard to tell front and back, and they're always a little blurry. This looks like the back here. It doesn't really matter where you cut, just when you put it on, which is the front and the back. So this tends to stretch a little, so I'm going to put this pattern I noticed up, and I like to cut around it with my scissors before I actually cut the hexagon, so I can come, you know, just cut it. Yes, it wastes a little bit of material, but it's worth not getting so frustrated because you're trying to cut out on a great big old thing. Okay, so here we have this, and then I just pin this on here. And I would pin all the sides because it does, the fleece does tend to move a little bit when you're cutting. Not the fleece, I mean the paper on the fleece. Where most of this stuff on cotton would stick better, but it doesn't stick as well on this, and it moves. So. And then just cut around the whole thing. I do find it easier when I'm cutting anything like this to go around and cut all of the these parts first, the upper part, before I cut in the middle slits, and then go back and do your slits like this. It's just less frustrating than constantly moving it back and forth. Okay, so there we have it, and remove your pins. When you remove your pins, try to remove the ones that are going this way so that you are the way of the head, because more than once I have had pins going two ways, so make sure you try to get them all the same way and then pull them out that way so you don't get cut by the other pin. Okay, so we have that, and then I just like to use the fleece as a guide for the batting, for the poly batting. And I probably, this looks like it's not enough, but remember we're going to cut it down, so I think I'm just going to use that piece. There's no sense in wasting it. And again, I'm just going to cut around it. And scissors does tend to stick. I don't know if you have a suggestion for that. That's fine. Okay, so I'm going to use the reason I'm using the fleece because it sticks better to the poly. So again, you can do it this way, or you can go around and do all the other first. But I do go back and forth. So cut your batting now. Okay, so I have my piece of fleece cut, and now I am going to take my fabric here, and I'm going to put this, I'm going to do it this way. Now another thing that you could use, I have not used it, but I know they said there was some kind of quilting glue, so that would be another idea to use. And now what you want to do is cut that down to your 1/4, or you can go ahead and sew it just below your 1/4 of an inch, or glue it just below your 1/4 of an inch and then cut it after that. So either way is fine. So I'm going to turn it this way. Yeah, and see, so a little big there. So, okay. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead. I've got it laid on my cotton part, the front, right side, whatever. And I'm just trying to cut around it a little bit. It was moving, so I did pin it. And I'm pinning it a little bit closer to the edge like that. And as you can see, I did cut it here. So if you pin it, it's going to stretch a little bit too, and that way when you go to take your couple of stitches in it to hold it in there. I mean, heck, this might even work if you just pinned it in there. I don't know if you pinned it in there, but I don't know. If you just pinned it in there and then put your backing on too, but you want to make sure that it's in there so that it doesn't come out when you turn it before you do your quilting. So basically, now that I've got that, I'm just kind of going along my 1/4 inch line. Just a little. I'm actually trying to go a little bit below it because I don't really want the batting inside the line or in my sewing. So just kind of go. You can see the line coming out there. If you cut your first 1/4 inch on one of them, you can kind of see the lines coming out after that. And this scissor seems to have, this is one of those really nice Guggenheim scissors that I got for like $20, but it seems to have like a little bit of something that's catching on the end when I go to cut, so that's kind of annoying. I'm actually going to try with my fiskars. I don't think this is my best fiskars. I think this kind of, I've got a good one over by my sewing machine, but this one for some reason isn't cutting as well. Who knows, somebody could have gotten a hold of it at some point and cut something with it they weren't supposed to. So go ahead and do that all the way around. Okay, so I have some heavier duty thread on here, button thread, so that I can see it a little better, and I'm tying a knot in. It doesn't matter, you don't have to cut the knot off in this one. And from the, you want to do it from the front. You want to make sure that your knot is in the front, because it'll be harder to get the knot out from the back. So I'm just going to start it from the front. And you can just take a couple of stitches, or you can go all the way around, however you want to do it. So I'm just doing it like that. And make sure you straighten that back out. Go back to your front. I only had a little piece on that, so here I've just sewn it like that. And we shall see. So just continue that around. I'm going to go ahead and just tie my knot, and I'm going to cut that off, and I am going to leave a tail so that it'll be easy to get out. And then I'm just going to do that all the way around. Shouldn't really take that long. Okay, I've got it all sewn. You can hopefully see that. I did it with white thread. You can't see it as well on this, but you should be able to see it on the dark. And I left these so that it would be easy to see where the knots are and take it out in the end. You might be able to, I do have a basting stitch on my sewing machine, so you might be able to do that too. My hands are terrible right now. I need to put some lotion on them. Okay, so I put some hand lotion on because it's sticking to this. My rough hands are sticking to everything. Okay, so now make sure that you've got this cut so you can see your lines. Your 1/4 inch seam. And so that you're not getting your batting, which I don't know if that's good or bad thing, getting the batting into the seam. I would think that you wouldn't want the batting in the seam. I'm not an expert on quilting. I'm teaching myself. I had done quilts when I was like 16, but I did those by hand and on a treadle machine of all things. Is where I sewed the squares together, and then I did all the quilting by hand, and I used yarn to do little doodads, because that's how a quilt looked to me. I did little so they looked like this with yarn, because it was heavier than the yarn stuck up like that. And that's how I did it. And I used a sheet for the backing of all the fabrics that I used to use, that my aunt used to buy, because she hated ironing. And so she would go and buy new fabric like every week for me to make 5 dresses for the girls. And it was this one simple A-line pattern that I would make the dresses out of, and then there was always scraps, so I made my mother a quilt out of that. I wish I knew where that quilt was, but it wasn't there when I cleaned out the house, when we sold the house, so I don't know where it went. So our next step is, now we're going to find our right side, and I do believe this is the right side, and I am going to try to put this together as well as I can to match. Okay, it looks pretty good, and now you can either pin it or you can use the clips, and I'm just going to use the clips today. So just clip all the way around, and then you're going to sew all the way around. But you want to make sure that you leave an opening to turn it. And I think the corduroy is going to be my easiest way to do it. So with my opening, I am going to sew, and I'm going to leave a little, I just find it easier than leaving the whole thing open. When you go to iron it, it just seems to lay flatter up here, so I'm probably going to leave an opening right here. So I'm just going to mark that as I'm just going to exit with a thing there saying that's my opening. Okay, so do that all the way around and then go ahead and sew it. So remember, the red was the grease pencil, so I'm sewing just a little bit up, and there is a little bit of extra there showing of the backing, so hopefully that, I think once you quilt it, it doesn't really matter that much, so, okay. And continue that around. Okay, so now I'm back at almost at the beginning. So I'm going to go ahead and sew up. And I forgot to leave much of an opening. I may have to take a little bit of that out. And then pivot again. And then backstitch. Make sure you backstitch real well where you did your opening so that it doesn't come out. Okay, now we have it sewn. Show you my opening here. Okay, so I did go back and make a little bit bigger opening. I just took that out. It only had to take a couple. So here's my opening. Okay, and I like to take, because it turns easier, my pinking shears. I got this at Amazon. I will, this is nice and lightweight. I used to pink all the time. We actually used to when I was a kid. My mother taught me to, because back in the 50s, 60s, I guess I learned when I was 9, so I would have been, I don't know, somewhere in 1948. I mean, 1958. I'm not that old. And so 1958 or so. And my mother taught me later, as a teen, to cut with the pinking shears. And so when I did a pattern, I cut it with the pinking shears. Fabric was very ravelly back then and really hard. You didn't have all those zigzag stitches and everything on your machine. So I used to cut everything with that, and I was in sewing class in my 9th grade class at my junior high school is what we called it back then, and it was 7th, 8th, and 9th. And I cut my pattern out with the pinking shears, and they gave me an F and sent me to the principal for insisting that that's how you did it. So I never forgot that. So the reason to use the pinking shears on this is because it makes everything easier to turn. So I can see the stitching a little bit better on my backing because it's a little bit more plain. So go ahead and just cut with the pinking shears, or cut, if you're cutting with a regular scissors, then you're going to have to do an indent in each of these. You're going to have to do that, but don't cut the threads. You'll just have to do a little snip right in between so that those corners fold over correctly. Okay, I've got it all cut. If you do accidentally cut the corners, or even with the pinking shears or whatever, just go back to your sewing machine and redo it. It's not that big a deal. You can just redo it. I'm going to do this a little bit closer to, there we go. Okay, now the fun part. You get to turn it, and it is a little bit the normal turning because you do have the batting in there. And the other thing I was going to say is, the weird thing is that I think this batting only goes down like this if, like this one did, if you actually iron on the batting. It just doesn't make sense because this is basically exactly the same, but this one that I did not iron before I sewn it, before I had sewn it together, is puffier. So it must have packed it down even with the paper and my ironing. I also have a little thing that I got from Amazon that you put over cloth, that like silk and stuff, that you don't want to put the iron directly on. So next thing we want to do, okay, so here I marked this here. I'm going to get rid of my threads, which I thought I already did. Okay, now you want to start at the bottom here. Here's my opening. So I'm going to start at the bottom and try to separate. Try not to tear this, because it will tear easily. And I'm going to start with those two bottom ones like that. And it's nice to have, I use a wooden spoon and also a chopstick. And the chopstick has a blunt end, so therefore you're not poking through when you do your ends. So let's see if this is going to fit through there okay. Okay, so here I got a hold of it. Now we have to get all of these ends in there. And like I said, if it's easier for you, just leave the whole thing open and you can do that closure later. So try to move it from the side that the batting isn't on, because that, like I said, that batting rips really easy. So try to pull it from that side. So just keep working on it. I'll get back to you. Okay, I've almost got it turned. I did have a little bit more problem. I didn't really have a problem with the other one, and I think the reason that I had a little bit more time consuming with this one was because of the corduroy, which isn't slick like a cotton would be, so it took a little bit longer. So I've got it turned, and now I'm going to start with my wooden spoon, and I'm just going to take all those ends out as much as I can. And you don't want to take out your basting yet, because if you took out your basting now, your batting could shift. So go ahead and poke all your hexagons out. And then you're going to press it. Turn the iron. Already went off. I'm going to go turn on my big iron. Okay, turn my iron on. Now I want to go through the opening with my, wherever it is. Oh, here it is. With my opening with my chopstick, so I can get all the corners out. So make sure that you get underneath your batting when you put the stick in, or you'll tear your batting. So do that for each hexagon, lifting as you go so that you can keep that batting on the bottom of the chopstick. See, all these corners still need to come out. And with the blunt chopstick, it helps a lot. So if you have to take your stick out and push it back in. Like I said, just keep it on top. Keep it on top, on the top of the batting. And then this one had a lot of stress on it, trying to get that corduroy through there. Like I said, it just went right through with the other one. So the one that I used, but then also that one had the flatter batting in it, because I had ironed the batting. So one of those two things. The only reason that I don't particularly feel like using that glue is because I was watching a video where people used the glue to do their quilting, and you know, to glue the quilting onto the back of the quilt to get the batting to stay on there so it doesn't shift. And it also messes up your needle a lot, so you have to keep taking your needle and wiping it down if you use glue. And it doesn't seem to do that with the Wonder Under if you use that. But like I said, you would have to get the batting that does not iron down, I guess. I'll have to look into that. I don't know what that is, so I'll have to look into that. So just get all these out and then we're gonna iron it. Okay, so the stitch that I am going to use that I liked the best was called 322. So I'm gonna set that, there we go. 322. I've been practicing different stitches as long as this is just kind of a practice thing. And you can use these, you can either sew the quilt together, I'll tell you about that in a minute, or you can use it for, you can use it for mug rugs or doilies or, you know, whichever you want. So what I did on the last one was I started and I put this together. That'll set in your, I went around the middle hexagon, and that will set in your batting so that it doesn't shift while you're doing other things, and then you'll be able to take out your basting. So you can either do it right over it, you can do it just above it. I'm going to just see, and I am going to do this with my hand stitching here, or with my automatic. So I'm actually going to put this down. I have an adjustment for slower on my sewing machine, so right now as I'm quilting I want to do it slower, and I'm just keeping the regular foot, J foot I believe it is on it. It's saying an N foot, but I don't even know what N foot is at the moment, so I'm just going to, I'd have to look at in there. It worked fine with my J foot, I haven't changed it. So just go ahead and go around, and you don't need to back stitch on this. I'm going to keep this just above. So I'll have to go a little bit over, you'll have to judge that. Okay, it looks like about there, and then again, make sure you have your needle down, and then pivot it that way, your needle. Pivot it to where you're going to go. So just continue that around. Okay, I'm on my last row here. I'm going to lift and pivot. And like I said, you don't have to back stitch when you get to the end here. So just finish it up so that it matches with that. Stitches on your thread, and you have that. Now if you want to go over this, you can go over this, or you can do it with another stitch. There's a lot of things you can do with that. Okay, the next thing you want to do is go ahead and take your stitches out so that you'll be able to sew that opening closed on there. I'm just going to go around and cut all of the knots out first, and then I should be able just to pull everything out. If I can figure out where all the knots, here's another one, I think. So see, then I just pulled that right out, and if you still have knots in there, it'll obviously stop, so you'll know you still have a knot in there. Okay, so I still have a knot, I believe, over here. Maybe right here, I guess I have one. There we go. still a knot there. Okay, there we go. And I do have a knot right here, so I can just pull that out because that was the end knot. Was the last of it. And then I'm going to go over and I am going to just set the iron to it again. Okay, now I'm going to go over and I am going to use that same stitch and I am going to sew around the edge, and that will catch in my opening. And as you can see, like on here, and that was that stitch on here too. So go ahead and you know, do that on your sewing machine. Make sure that you look at the back and make sure that the back is turned in. Okay, so I have it all quilted, so you can hopefully see those edges like that. And I did go back over this and went inside. And I do have a, there really isn't, it looked like there was a little wrinkle there, but there's not. And here's the back. So it's all nice and flat, and I do have little, usually little things sticking up here and there, so I will just cut those off. And I used white thread, but you can use any color thread you want. If you want a contrast thread, use any stitch you want. Zigzag stitch will work. Blanket stitch will work. I've done a couple other stitches. This one is the same stitch as this. And this one, obviously I like that stitch. This was the first one that I showed you that I did, and that is all that stitch. I got really carried away. I went all over. So that's another reason why that one is flat, even without the batting in. And this one I did a blanket-like stitch on. I don't know if you can see that very well or not, but a blanket stitch. And this one I did some kind of like a honeycomb stitch. This was, let me, here you can see on the green, the honeycomb stitch. So at this point, like I said, you can use these for a mug rug. You can use it for doilies. You can use it for hot pads. It would be a big one, but if you were using it by hand, but it would work great for pans. Although I would spray it with like a resistant thing if you're going to put pans on it, so that if it gets the dirt from the bottom of the pan on, you can wash it off easy. Scotch card, couldn't think of it anymore. I still have some sitting, God only knows how old that is, that I have sitting up there. I haven't used that in years, but I do have some in the closet. So you can do that, or if you're doing a matching, you know, what your different ones, because these are all different, it wouldn't look good. They're different, and some are flat and some aren't, so it wouldn't make a very good quilt. But if you're using the same things, then at this point you can take, I'm going to get rid of the ones that are really the flannel one, because that's going to be too puffy looking. But you could do, you can sew these together. Now there are videos on there that shows you how to, you can either sew this by hand, and you could do it with a overstitch, or you could do it with a ladder stitch, which you wouldn't see so much. It'd take you forever, but there are a lot of videos on there that will show you how to actually sew this together. So you could even use this honeycomb stitch, blanket stitch, that whatever stitch this is that I love on it. So there's several different. I'm going to push this back so you can see better. And so you would just see it would all fit together if you were going to make. And then you would have the edges of your quilt would be, would have the, would not be straight, you know, on it, unless you did something, and I haven't figured that out yet. I know there's a way of doing, of putting like something, like you would have to put each of them, but then you still don't have a square. So I think if that seems like a really lot of trouble. So I think if you were going to do it, another way of doing this would be to go ahead and put, just make it like this, and then put it onto your onto a square, onto a background, and then sew the squares or rectangles together. So that's what I did. So I hope you got some insight through this, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the weekend, and I will get this up onto my YouTube channel. Have a wonderful day and keep safe. God bless.